Part 1. Nobody noticed the moment America changed, because it didn't happen with sirens or speeches or tanks rolling down city streets. It happened quietly, buried in a late-night video that barely crossed 1 million views before it started disappearing from the internet altogether. By the time most people woke up, the damage was already done, and the story you're about to hear had already begun pulling the country toward a reckoning no one was prepared for. At 2:17 a.m. Eastern Time, the video went live. It wasn't flashy. No dramatic music. No edited cuts. Just a single camera, slightly tilted, pointed at a man sitting alone in what looked like a government office after hours. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. A small American flag stood behind him, half-shadowed. He didn't introduce himself right away. He didn't smile. He didn't blink for almost 30 seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, steady, and unmistakably trained. "If you're watching this," he said, "then the system has already failed." Within minutes, the clip began spreading across encrypted group chats, private forums, and obscure corners of social media. Not because it was sensational, but because it felt real in a way that terrified people. The man wasn't guessing. He wasn't ranting. He was delivering information, piece by piece, like someone who knew exactly what would happen next. "My name doesn't matter," he continued. "What matters is that I was hired to protect the truth. And tonight, I'm breaking that oath." In a small apartment outside Phoenix, Arizona, a former investigative journalist named Daniel Carter watched the video twice without moving. His coffee sat untouched on the desk. The room was dark except for the glow of his laptop screen, and the sound of the man's voice felt heavier each time it played. Daniel knew that tone. It was the same tone he'd heard years earlier when a source told him a story that cost Daniel his career, his reputation, and almost his life. Calm, certain, dangerous. The man in the video leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice as if someone might be listening. "For decades," he said, "you've been told that your government is divided. Red versus blue, left versus right. But that division is the greatest illusion ever sold to the American people. Because behind closed doors, there is no division at all." Daniel's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He didn't type. He didn't breathe. "The truth," the man continued, "is that a single network controls the flow of power, money, and information across every major institution in this country. Elections are negotiated. Crises are manufactured. And justice is selectively enforced." Across the country, in a quiet suburb outside Washington, D.C., a junior intelligence analyst named Rebecca Morales felt her stomach tighten as the video played on her phone. She was still in bed, her alarm set for 6, her badge lying on the nightstand beside her. She recognized the office behind the man. Not exactly, but enough to know it wasn't fake. That room existed, and only a handful of people were ever allowed inside it. "This network," the man said, "operates above the law because it helped write the law. It survives exposure by controlling what you're allowed to see. And tonight, it's going to try very hard to erase me." Rebecca sat up, heart pounding. Erase me. That wasn't a metaphor. In her line of work, it never was. The video cut briefly, then returned at a slightly different angle. The man looked more tense now, as if time was running out. "I've prepared evidence," he said. "Documents, recordings, financial trails, names. Everything is already in motion. If this video is still online, then the first release has already happened." Daniel's phone buzzed. A single text message from an unknown number. "Check your email now." He didn't hesitate. He opened his inbox, and there it was. No subject line, no sender name, just an encrypted attachment and a password sent in a second message. Daniel's hands trembled as he unlocked the file. Inside were hundreds of documents. Government memos stamped classified, bank transfers routed through shell corporations, meeting transcripts that were never meant to exist. And at the center of it all, a symbol Daniel had seen before but never proven. A discreet insignia. A quiet mark. The network. Back on the video, the man straightened in his chair. "They'll tell you I'm a traitor," he said. "They'll tell you I'm unstable. They'll tell you this is foreign disinformation. But ask yourself one question." He paused. "If this is a lie, why are they trying so hard to bury it?" Within an hour, the video was flagged. Within 2, it was removed. By morning, major platforms claimed it violated unspecified policies. News outlets dismissed it as a hoax before verifying a single claim. But it was too late. Copies had already spread, and people like Daniel and Rebecca now understood something terrifying. This wasn't a leak. It was a declaration of war. As the sun rose over Washington, a black SUV pulled into an underground garage beneath a federal building. Men and women in tailored suits stepped out, their faces calm, their phones already buzzing with emergency alerts. In a secure conference room, a senior official slammed his hand against the table. He wasn't supposed to go public, he snapped. Another voice answered quietly, he knew he wouldn't survive long enough for a private release. So where is he? The official demanded. Silence followed. Then a third voice spoke. That's the problem, she said. We don't know. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter sat back in his chair, staring at the files on his screen, realizing that everything he'd lost might finally make sense. The truth he'd chased for years wasn't gone. It had just been waiting. And Rebecca Morales, badge clipped to her jacket, walked into her office knowing that by the end of the day, she would have to choose between her career and her conscience. Because once the first domino falls, the rest don't get a choice. And this was only the beginning. Part 2. By 9:03 a.m., the federal building no longer felt like a workplace. It felt like a sealed container under pressure, every hallway humming with restrained panic disguised as routine. Rebecca Morales scanned her badge at the security gate, her expression neutral, her pulse anything but. She could feel it in the air, that subtle shift that only happened when something had gone terribly wrong and the people in charge were pretending it hadn't. Inside the intelligence floor, conversations stopped when she walked past. Not completely, not obviously, but enough to be noticed if you knew what to listen for. Screens flickered with internal alerts marked priority red. Analysts leaned closer to their monitors, shoulders tight, voices lowered. Rebecca reached her desk and logged in. The first thing that loaded wasn't her task queue. It was a system-wide directive. All units, cease non-essential operations. Do not discuss the video. Do not download, share, or acknowledge related materials. Any violation will be treated as a security breach. Rebecca swallowed. They hadn't even named it. Just, the video. As if refusing to define it could erase its existence. Her supervisor, Mark Ellison, appeared beside her desk moments later. Mid-40s, clean-cut, the kind of man who'd built a career on never rocking the boat. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Conference room, he said quietly. Now, inside, half a dozen analysts sat stiffly. Around the table, a screen at the front displayed a paused frame from the video, blurred just enough to avoid officially showing it. The man's face was obscured, but the posture was unmistakable. Mark closed the door. You've all seen the directive, he began. Let me be clear. This is not an internal debate. This is not a mystery to solve. This is damage control. One analyst raised a hand. Sir, if even half of what he's claiming. Mark cut him off. Claims are irrelevant. Optics are everything. Rebecca felt something cold settle in her chest. This individual, Mark continued, is being labeled a hostile actor. Effective immediately. Your job is to support that conclusion with whatever data is necessary. Support the conclusion, not find the truth. Rebecca glanced at the screen again. Her mind replayed the office behind the man, the angle of the camera, the flag placement. Those details weren't random. They were precise, intentional, real. Any questions? Mark asked. No one spoke. Good. Then let's get to work. Across the country, Daniel Carter hadn't slept. He sat surrounded by open folders, multiple monitors filled with documents that refused to fit into the neat boxes America liked to put its reality in. The scale of it was overwhelming. This wasn't corruption. It was architecture. A system designed to appear chaotic while functioning with brutal efficiency behind the scenes. And the names. Daniel leaned back, running a hand through his hair. Some of them were ghosts. Others were media darlings. A few were people he'd once trusted, quoted, even defended. The network wasn't hiding in the shadows. It was standing in plain sight, protected by familiarity. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. They're watching the downloads. You need to move fast. Daniel typed back. Who is this? The reply came instantly. Unknown number. Someone who doesn't want you dead yet. Daniel exhaled sharply. Great, he muttered. He encrypted the files again, splitting them into fragments, uploading them to servers spread across jurisdictions designed to never cooperate with one another. Redundancy was survival. If one copy vanished, 10 more would remain. His laptop chimed. A new message. Unknown number. He didn't plan to survive this. But he planned for you too. Daniel stared at the screen. Why me? He whispered. Because you already lost everything. The answer appeared a second later. Daniel closed his eyes. That much was true. Back in Washington, Rebecca was assigned to trace the origin of the video upload. Officially, it was to confirm foreign interference. Unofficially, it was to fabricate a trail convincing enough to satisfy the public. She worked silently, her fingers moving automatically while her thoughts raced. The metadata was clean. Too clean. No sloppy mistakes, no obvious fingerprints. Whoever had uploaded it understood counterintelligence better than most of the people now trying to hunt him. Rebecca cross-referenced the upload timestamp with internal access logs. Her screen froze, then updated. A match. Not external. Internal. Her breath caught. She pulled the access badge data tied to the time window. Clearance levels. Building access. Secure room usage. The list narrowed faster than it should have. 5 names. One of them made her stomach drop. Mark Ellison. She leaned back slowly, keeping her face neutral, acutely aware that her screen activity could be monitored. Her supervisor hadn't just known about the room. He'd been inside it. At that exact time. Across the city, the secure conference room filled again. This time, the mood was sharper, voices edged with urgency. "We've lost containment," one official said. "Independent journalists are circling. Former intelligence assets are resurfacing. This is metastasizing." A woman at the head of the table spoke calmly. "Then accelerate phase 2. Several heads turned. "That's risky," someone said. "If the public connects the dots." "They won't," she replied. "They never do. Not when you give them something louder to look at." A pause. "What about the journalist?" Another voice asked. "Daniel Carter," she said. "He's predictable, emotional, easy to discredit." "And the analyst," someone added. The woman's eyes flicked up. "Which one?" Rebecca's computer pinged. An internal message request. From Mark. "Meet me in my office. Now." Her pulse thundered. She closed the data window, restoring her screen to a harmless-looking map trace, then stood and walked calmly down the hall, every step measured. Mark's office door closed behind her. He didn't sit. "You're very good," he said quietly. Rebecca's mouth went dry. "At my job, sir." "At noticing things," he replied. "At asking the wrong questions." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "I follow the data." Mark smiled thinly. So did he. Her heart skipped. "Who?" "The man in the video." Silence stretched between them. "You should stop," Mark said. "Before curiosity becomes a liability." Rebecca's voice was steady. "Is he alive?" Mark's smile faded. "That depends on how many people make the same mistake you're making." She left his office with her legs trembling but her resolve hardening. The truth wasn't abstract anymore. It had a face, a location, a cost. That night, as Daniel prepared to publish the first tranche of documents through an independent platform immune to takedown requests, his power flickered. Once, twice, then stabilized. His phone rang. "No caller ID." He answered. "Daniel Carter," a familiar voice said calmly. "They're coming." Daniel stood slowly. "Where are you?" A pause. "Closer than you think," the man replied. "And running out of time." Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. "And Daniel," the voice added, "when this goes live, there's no turning back." Daniel looked at the publish button glowing on his screen. "I know," he said. And he clicked it. Across the country, alarms began to ring in places the public would never see. Because the second domino had just fallen. Part 3. The moment Daniel Carter hit publish, the internet did what it always did when the truth slipped through its fingers. It fractured, multiplied, and refused to behave. The documents didn't just appear on one site. They bloomed across mirrors, backups, peer-to-peer chains, and anonymous drops like spores in the wind. Every attempt to erase them only made them spread faster. Inside a secure operations center in Northern Virginia, analysts watched real-time traffic maps turn red. "It's not slowing," one technician said, voice tight. "They're copying everything." "Shut down the platform," a senior official snapped. "We did. 5 minutes ago." "Then why is it still live?" The technician swallowed. "Because it isn't one platform anymore." Across the country, Daniel didn't wait to see the reaction. He grabbed the go bag he'd packed years earlier and moved fast, exiting his apartment through the stairwell instead of the elevator, hood up, phone powered down. He didn't look back. He knew better than to assume he had time. Outside, the night felt wrong. Too quiet, too alert. He slipped into his car and drove without destination, letting muscle memory guide him through side streets and service roads, away from anything predictable. His heart hammered, but his mind was clear. Fear sharpened him. It always had. In Washington, Rebecca Morales sat alone in her car in an underground garage, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel as the world above her accelerated toward chaos. Her secure phone buzzed relentlessly with internal alerts she no longer trusted. She ignored them. Instead, she replayed everything she'd seen. The access logs. Mark's warning. The woman in the conference room calling decisions that would never be recorded. The pattern was undeniable now. This wasn't damage control. It was containment of the public. Her phone vibrated again, this time with an encrypted message routed through a channel she hadn't used since training. Unknown contact. If you're reading this, you already know too much. Rebecca stared at the screen. She typed back carefully. Who is this? The reply came after a long pause. Unknown contact. Someone who helped build the cage. And now wants out. Rebecca's grip tightened. Where? 3 words appeared. Union Station. Midnight. Across the city, emergency meetings blurred together. News networks struggled to keep up, first dismissing the leak, then hedging, then quietly shifting tone as independent verification began stacking up. Financial analysts noticed anomalies. Legal experts flagged names. Former officials started denying things they hadn't yet been accused of. The louder the denials grew, the more people listened. In a secure room buried beneath layers of concrete and authorization codes, the woman from the conference table watched the feeds calmly. Begin phase 3, she said. A man beside her hesitated. That will expose assets. Yes, she replied, but it will also restore order. Rebecca arrived at Union Station early, blending into the late-night crowd, her badge left behind, her weapon secured but hidden. She scanned faces, every instinct on edge. Rebecca Morales. She turned. A man in his late 50s stood a few feet away, posture relaxed, eyes sharp. He wore no badge, no insignia, nothing that marked him as important. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. He smiled faintly. Neither should you. They walked. I helped write the protocols you're seeing now, he said. The ones designed to steer outcomes without appearing to do so. Elections? Rebecca asked. Crises, he corrected. Elections are just one tool. Her jaw tightened. Why tell me? Because the system isn't malfunctioning, he said. It's operating exactly as intended. And someone finally disrupted the timing. Who was he? Rebecca asked. The man in the video. The man stopped walking. He was the failsafe. Rebecca's breath caught. Meaning if too many internal checks failed, he said, he was authorized to burn it all down. Across the state line, Daniel pulled into an abandoned rest stop and killed the engine. He checked the mirrors, listening. Nothing followed him. Not yet. His phone buzzed to life. A message from the same unknown number. Unknown number. You're doing fine. Keep moving north. Daniel typed back. They're escalating. The reply was immediate. Unknown number. We expected that. They always choose force when narrative control slips. Who are you? Daniel asked. Several seconds passed. Unknown number. Someone who doesn't get to exist publicly anymore. Before Daniel could respond, headlights flared behind him. He cursed, turned the key, and peeled out as a black SUV surged forward, engine roaring. The chase was brutal and silent, no sirens, no warnings. Just intent. Daniel drove like someone who had nothing left to lose. In Washington, Rebecca listened as the man laid out the truth in calm, devastating detail. Shell corporations. Legal loopholes. Emergency powers quietly extended and never returned. Media partnerships disguised as access journalism. Intelligence failures that weren't failures at all. People think control looks like force, the man said. It doesn't. It looks like choice. Carefully curated. Can it be stopped? Rebecca asked. He met her eyes. Only if enough people refuse to play along. At that exact moment, emergency alerts lit up phones across the country. A sudden national security threat. An unnamed foreign actor. Temporary measures. Expanded authority. Rebecca felt sick. They're using it, she said. Right now. Yes, the man replied. And that's why you need to decide who you are. Daniel swerved off the highway, ditching his car into a wooded embankment, running hard as headlights swept the trees. He crashed through brush, lungs burning, until hands grabbed him from the darkness. Easy, a voice whispered. You're safe. For now. Daniel recognized it instantly. The man from the video stepped into view. You're alive, Daniel breathed. Barely, he replied. And not for much longer if we don't finish this. Sirens echoed in the distance. Back at Union Station, Rebecca stared at the man who'd just shattered her understanding of everything. What happens next? She asked. He answered without hesitation. Next, he said, they try to silence you both. And across the nation, the machinery of control shifted into a higher gear, no longer subtle, no longer patient. Because the truth was no longer a rumor. It was moving. And it had names. Part 4. They moved before dawn, because daylight belonged to cameras, and cameras belonged to narratives. The man from the video, who now insisted on being called Elias, led Daniel through a maze of back roads, abandoned service tunnels, and half-forgotten infrastructure projects that never appeared on public maps. America had been hollowed out quietly over decades, and Elias knew every hidden corridor. They'll blame a foreign power by morning, Elias said as they walked. They always do. It buys them time. Daniel glanced back at the dark tree line behind them. How much time? Enough to consolidate, Elias replied. Not enough to stop what you already released. They reached a rusted access door beneath an old rail bridge. Elias keyed in a code that shouldn't have existed anymore. The door opened anyway. Inside, servers hummed. Off-grid, Elias said. Legacy hardware. Pre-cloud. Pre-surveillance economy. Daniel stared. You planned this a long time ago. I hoped I'd never need it. Across the city, Rebecca Morales didn't go home. She returned to her apartment only long enough to collect a burner phone, a change of clothes, and a sealed envelope she'd sworn never to open unless something catastrophic happened. She opened it anyway. Inside was a single sentence, handwritten. Trust your instincts, not your clearance. Her secure phone rang. Mark Ellison. She didn't answer. Instead, she disabled it, dropped it into a trash chute, and walked out into the city as a civilian for the first time in years. By mid-morning, the media storm had reached full force. Officials appeared on every channel, calm and confident, assuring Americans that there was no internal threat, no systemic wrongdoing, and no reason for concern. The word misinformation echoed so often it began to lose meaning. But the documents kept talking. Independent auditors confirmed financial trails. Former staffers recognized signatures. Foreign governments quietly acknowledged receiving pressure they'd never spoken about publicly. The illusion was cracking. In the Secure Operations Center, Mark Ellison watched the feeds with a clenched jaw. She disappeared, an aide said. No activity. No pings. Mark nodded slowly. She made her choice. And Carter. Still breathing, Mark said. For now. The woman from the conference room stepped closer, her expression unreadable. Escalate, she said. If the truth insists on movement, give the public something to run from. Within hours, a major incident dominated headlines. Fear surged. Attention shifted. Algorithms obeyed. But something unexpected happened. The leaks didn't fade. They waited. Daniel sat beside Elias in the underground room as more data unlocked automatically, triggered by global responses Elias had predicted years earlier. You built a dead man's switch for democracy, Daniel said. Elias smiled faintly. I built a mirror. People just don't like what they see. Why now? Daniel asked. Why not earlier? Because the system had to overreach, Elias replied. People only notice the cage when it tightens. Rebecca stood in line at a crowded cafe, watching news footage play silently on a mounted screen. Everyone was looking up. No one was talking. Her burner phone buzzed. Unknown contact. If you want the rest of the truth, stop pretending you're invisible. She typed back one word. Where? A response followed. The place they never look. An address appeared. Daniel and Elias prepared to split. They'll come for you harder, Elias said. You're the storyteller. And you? Daniel asked. Elias's eyes hardened. I'll draw fire. Outside, the city buzzed with controlled panic. Helicopters cut the sky. Police presence increased under the banner of safety. Rebecca arrived at the address just before sunset. It was a public records office. Unassuming. Forgotten. Inside, a single woman waited. The same woman from the conference room. You're brave, the woman said. Or foolish. Rebecca didn't sit. You're the architect. The woman smiled slightly. I prefer steward. People are waking up, Rebecca said. You can't stop that. I don't need to, the woman replied. I just need to redirect it. Daniel watched from a rooftop as agents surrounded a decoy location across the river. They think you're there, Elias said calmly beside him. And you're letting them. Yes. Sirens wailed. Helicopters converged. Rebecca's pulse thundered as the woman leaned closer. You think this ends with justice, the woman said softly. It doesn't. It ends with stability. Rebecca met her gaze. At what cost? The woman didn't answer. At that exact moment, every major platform received a synchronized data drop. Unfiltered, uncurated, unstoppable. Daniel's phone buzzed nonstop. Elias exhaled slowly. It's done, he said. And across the nation, the story broke free of every attempt to contain it. Not as a headline, but as a reckoning. Part 5. The country didn't explode. It fractured. Not all at once, not loudly, but in layers. Trust collapsed faster than infrastructure ever could. Polls were abandoned. Press briefings were heckled. Officials stopped promising clarity and started promising calm, which only made people more nervous. Inside the underground server room, Daniel watched global traffic spike beyond anything he'd ever seen. The data drop Elias had triggered was no longer being debated. It was being dissected. Lawyers, economists, former agents, foreign watchdogs, and ordinary citizens were combing through it together in real time. Crowdsourced truth moved faster than centralized denial. They can't spin all of it, Daniel said. Elias leaned against the table, pale now, a hand pressed briefly to his side before dropping again. They don't need to. They just need to survive long enough to reshape the aftermath. Daniel noticed the blood too late. You're hurt. Elias waved it off. Occupational hazard. Above them, in places no one voted for and no one could name, emergency councils met behind sealed doors. The woman known internally as the steward listened as reports flooded in. Multiple resignations, an aide said. Unscheduled. Foreign partners are distancing themselves, another added. Publicly neutral. Privately furious. The steward nodded slowly. And the public. They don't know who to believe anymore. A faint smile crossed her face. Good. Confusion is still control. But even as she spoke, another aide stepped forward. There's a problem, he said. Morales. Rebecca Morales walked out of the records office with copies no one was supposed to be able to make. The steward hadn't stopped her. That alone was confirmation enough. Inside the documents were emergency protocols never disclosed to Congress. Conditional powers triggered not by law, but by consensus among a private advisory group with no public oversight. The network. Rebecca didn't run. She didn't hide. She went where the truth would hurt most. Daylight. Public space. She uploaded. Within minutes, the narrative shifted again. This time, there was no foreign scapegoat. No convenient villain. Just signatures. Processes. Intent. In the underground room, alarms pinged softly. Elias exhaled. She found the spine. Daniel stared at the screen. This changes everything. Elias shook his head. It accelerates everything. Agents closed in. Not with sirens. With silence. Daniel sensed it first. The air changed. The hum of servers felt louder. They're here, Daniel said. Elias nodded. It's time. For what? For the last switch. Elias handed Daniel a drive. This goes live only if I don't walk out of here. What is it? The proof they can't survive. Daniel's throat tightened. Come with me. Elias met his eyes. I already chose. Above ground, Rebecca watched crowds gather around screens replaying leaked footage, documents, timelines. People argued, but they argued about facts now, not distractions. Her burner phone rang. The steward. Rebecca answered. You could have been powerful, the steward said calmly. I chose to be honest, Rebecca replied. Honesty doesn't govern nations. Neither should fear. Silence stretched. You know how this ends, the steward said. Yes, Rebecca answered. With exposure. Daniel sprinted through the tunnels as doors slammed behind him. Shouts echoed. Orders barked. Behind him, Elias stayed. The servers went dark, then blazed back to life. Every safeguard disabled. Every hidden archive unlocked. A final message auto-published across every mirror site. Signed statements. Full chains of command. Irreversible. Daniel burst into daylight as helicopters thundered overhead. Inside the underground room, Elias sat calmly as agents flooded in. Do you know what you've done? One shouted. Elias smiled faintly. I reminded them they still have a choice. A single gunshot echoed. The servers continued uploading. Rebecca stood among strangers watching the news break fully, finally, undeniably. Arrests. Indictments. Emergency injunctions. Markets trembled. So did institutions. The steward watched it all from her office, expression unreadable. This isn't over, she murmured. Outside, chants began to rise. Not for parties. Not for leaders. For answers. And for the first time in decades, the system had none ready. Because the final domino was already falling. Part 6. The night Elias died, the country stopped pretending the fire could be contained. By morning, courts were overwhelmed with emergency filings. Judges who had never been household names were suddenly the most watched people in America. Some ruled. Some delayed. Some resigned without explanation. Every decision, every silence, every procedural maneuver was dissected in public within minutes. Daniel Carter didn't sleep. He couldn't. He moved between safe locations arranged by people he didn't know but trusted instinctively, carrying Elias's final drive like a weight pressing against his ribs. The data on it was untouched. Waiting for confirmation. Waiting for the last lie to be spoken out loud. In Washington, Rebecca Morales stood before a hastily assembled oversight panel in a secured but no longer private room. Cameras were not allowed inside, but audio leaked anyway. It always did now. You're asking me why I broke protocol, Rebecca said evenly. I didn't. I followed the Constitution. Your protocols broke that long ago. A senator leaned forward. Do you understand the consequences of what you've done? Yes, Rebecca replied. That's why I did it. Outside, crowds gathered again, larger this time, quieter, more focused. They weren't shouting slogans. They were reading. Phones glowed with documents. People explained things to each other. Knowledge had become communal. In a fortified office, the steward listened as her remaining advisors spoke in clipped, urgent tones. We're losing intermediaries. Media compliance is collapsing. Foreign partners are demanding transparency or withdrawal. The steward raised a hand. Then we adapt, she said. We always do. But the dead man's switch is incomplete, she snapped. It always is. Nothing survives without ambiguity. She turned to the window, watching the city churn below. Find Carter. Daniel watched the news feed shift in tone again. Not denial now. Negotiation. A senior official appeared on screen. We acknowledge that mistakes were made. Daniel scoffed. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. They're preparing a controlled confession. Daniel typed back. That won't be enough. Unknown number. It never is. That's why Elias left you the last word. In the distance, thunder rolled. Rebecca was escorted out of the building under protective custody. The air felt charged, like the country was holding its breath. Her phone vibrated. A single message. From Daniel Carter. Ready. She didn't hesitate. Now. Daniel sat alone, laptop open, fingers hovering. He thought of Elias's calm voice. Of the blood. Of the certainty. He inserted the drive. Files bloomed onto the screen. Video statements. Signed contingency orders. A recorded meeting. The steward's voice. Clear, calm, unmistakable, explaining how public fear could be modeled, guided, and harvested. Daniel swallowed. He cued the release. Across the city, the steward's aide rushed in. It's Carter, he said. He has. The room went silent as every screen flickered. Daniel pressed publish. There was no explosion, no sound, just silence. Then everything changed. Networks cut feeds mid-sentence. Officials froze. Markets halted. Emergency powers were challenged in real time with their own signatures. Rebecca watched the reaction ripple outward, unstoppable now. Inside her secured vehicle, she closed her eyes. This is it, she whispered. In her office, the steward sat very still as her own words played back to her on a screen she could no longer control. So long as they believe stability is safety, her recorded voice said, they will surrender anything. The steward smiled faintly. Outside, chants returned, louder now, unified. Truth, truth, truth. The institutions that survived did so by bending. The ones that didn't cracked cleanly. And as dawn broke over a shaken nation, the question was no longer whether the system would change. Only who would be left standing when it did. Because Part 7 was coming. And there would be no ambiguity left. Part 7. The morning after the final release, America woke up into clarity the way people wake after surgery, slow, disoriented, and painfully aware that something irreversible had been done. The noise was gone. No emergency banners. No breathless anchors filling time. Just facts, documents, recordings, timelines, all laid bare and impossible to unsee. The steward did not flee. She resigned. At 8:11 a.m., a single-page statement appeared, clinical and restrained, citing health reasons and a desire to avoid distraction during a period of national recalibration. It fooled no one. Within minutes, warrants followed. Not dramatic arrests. No spectacle. Just process. That was the difference now. Process mattered again. Daniel Carter stood on the balcony of a borrowed apartment, watching the city move below him. People still went to work. Buses still ran. Life didn't collapse. It adjusted. That, more than anything, stunned him. His phone buzzed. Rebecca Morales. They're convening a public commission, she said. Independent. International observers. Full authority. Daniel closed his eyes. They're really doing it. They don't have a choice anymore. Silence stretched. Elias would have liked this, Daniel said quietly. Rebecca's voice softened. Elias made this inevitable. Inside a federal courthouse, sealed indictments were unsealed. Names once untouchable were read aloud in rooms where sunlight reached the floor. Defense teams arrived early. Plea deals were offered and rejected. Some spoke. Some didn't. The truth no longer needed permission. News coverage changed tone permanently. Less certainty. More sourcing. When anchors didn't know something, they said so. Ratings dipped at first, then stabilized. People stayed anyway. They wanted reality now, not reassurance. Daniel released his final piece that afternoon. No bombshell, no accusation, just a clean, chronological account of how the system had been built, how it had drifted, and how it had been exposed. He titled it simply, The Choice. Rebecca testified openly, not as a hero, not as a victim, as a witness. She answered every question she could and admitted every moment she'd stayed silent longer than she should have. No one booed. Some people cried. In a quiet cemetery outside the city, Daniel stood alone at a simple marker with no name. There were no cameras, no speeches, just wind and leaves and the low hum of a country learning how to listen again. You were right, Daniel said softly. They noticed when it tightened. Weeks passed. Emergency powers expired and were not renewed. Oversight mechanisms were rewritten in plain language. Some institutions shrank. Others dissolved entirely. A few were rebuilt from the ground up, slower, messier, but honest. Not perfect. Never perfect. Rebecca declined offers to run for office. She joined the commission instead, helping design guardrails she wished had existed sooner. She slept better than she had in years. Daniel turned down book deals. He taught instead, small classes, uncomfortable questions, the importance of primary sources. He told his students the truth wasn't fragile. It was just patient. On the anniversary of the video, a memorial aired quietly online. Not dramatized, not monetized, just the footage of Elias sitting under buzzing lights, speaking calmly into a camera, saying exactly what he meant. At the end, a new caption appeared. The system failed. The people did not. America didn't become something new overnight. It became something awake. And that was enough. Because the truth didn't save the country. The choice did. The end.